Kindly like the video and subscribe our channel for daily updates.
We are going to get started with functions. Function is again, you can say query or a code that performs a specific task similar to your stored procedure but not same as your stored procedure. Normally we use functions to calculate, to perform some kind of complex calculations and reuse it wherever we want. So functions cannot be used standalone. It should always be used in your select clause. See, for example, we have seen a lot of functions which were predefined. Datetime functions are predefined. String functions, they are predefined. All the functions are predefined. Whatever we have seen till now, convert, cast, and string length. So we have seen a lot of things. So we saw that we need to use them in select clause. I cannot use them standalone, like execute stored procedure we did. So that I cannot do. And in stored procedure, you can have multiple return types or return value. Stored procedure can return n number of values, but function can return only one value. Its return type is single, one. So let us see. Function is a section of code that performs an independent task. Function cannot be executed standalone. It is always used in query like with select clause. Function can return one and only one parameter. So we call it as scalar functions. You can also write a function that returns some records. So table valued function we say, but we hardly use that. Anyway, I'll show you when that. We cannot implement transactions using function. See, we are getting this term transactions in stored procedure. You can implement transactions in functions. You cannot implement. So this is a very famous interview question. What is the difference between stored procedures and functions? I hope now you people can say, right? So stored procedures can be executed standalone using exec, whereas functions cannot be executed standalone. It should be executed in select clause, or it should be used inside your select clause. In stored procedure, you can have your complex logics. You can write transactions, whereas in functions, you cannot write transactions. A stored procedure can return multiple parameters, whereas a function can return one and only one parameter. So these are more than enough differences. Now let us see this scenario. We already have this database design, right? Student subject marks. Now get student name, total marks they got along with grade, where grade is value returned from get grade function. So we'll write a query and we'll see that this query is little complex, and we'll try to simplify that query by writing user defined function. Our function will be calculating grade based upon the average marks. So this is our requirement. So we are going to implement this. Databases, OrgDB, programmability, functions we have. I'll just right click and I'll say new scalar function, or new function you can say. Just I want to show you the syntax. Create function name, then bracket open, bracket close, all the parameters that you want. Then return the type of data that it is returning as begin and end is must in your function. So I'll copy this syntax. I'll go for new query. Just for you people to remember easily, create function name. I can write some function. So we'll come back to this writing function. First of all, we'll try to solve the problem that we have. I'll copy this. This is syntax template, you can think. Right? We'll use this. this is what we need to implement, right? Now, first of all, what do I want? I want to display student name, total marks. So for that, first of all, I'll display student name, subject name, and marks they got. We'll proceed in that way, right? So I need to write student name is in student table, subject name is in subject table, marks in marks subject student table or student subject table. So I need to write join on 3 tables. Now I'll show you one magic. Do you want to see? I'll right click and say design query in editor. What is that I'm saying? Design query in editor. What are the tables you want? The first child table is, or any table you can select now. Student table, subject table, student subject table. These are the 3 tables that I want. I'll close this. So you got 3 tables. What are the columns you want? Student name, subject name, marks. I'll say okay. You got the query. Got the join query? Is it interesting? I should have shown this on the day 1, right? But you will not learn query writing if I show you on day 1. So I'll just arrange this properly. That's it. Is this clear? Let me execute and see whether we are getting the expected result or not. We are getting the result. Now, whatever may be your query, you can use Query Designer. After mastering writing query manually, I want you people to go for using Query Designer. So you can add multiple tables and it will automatically perform joins. If you want left outer join, you can also do that. I'll select this. See, these are all inner joins. See, by default, I'll select all. Again, I'll right click. I'll go for design query in editor. It has loaded the same query. Now on this, I'll see what is the left table for this student. This is the right table. I'll just right click and say select all rows from student. Now you should see left outer join. So right outer join, because this is the child table, this is the parent table. So I'll arrange this way. Normally I told you your child table on should be on left. So this is your right outer join. Now I'll just right click and I'll uncheck this. I'll right click and say select all rows from student subject. You get left outer join. I'll select both full outer join. Is this clear? So in this way you can write the query. If you want to alias and make it look little simple, so subject S, you can alias, right? And here you can say S dot or SB. For subject I'll say SB. So I'll say SB dot. And here I'll say SB dot. And for student subject I'll say SS. And here I'll say SS dot. And here also I'll say SS dot. SS dot. And for student I'll say ST. And here I'll say ST dot. So there is nothing new. We haven't done anything new. Same. What all we did earlier, the same thing we are writing. and again inner join this. I hope you should not have any doubt in this. This is the simplest query that we have. Student name, subject name and marks. Now I need to perform average. Copy. Paste it here. Now if I want average, I'll say student name. I will remove subject name and I'll say average of marks as average. Now what should I do? Will it work? Student name and average. Is it going to work? We have student name and I want average of all the marks. Will it work? Yes. Huh? If you people do not answer, I'll lose interest. I need to say group by. Group by what? Tell me. Student name. st dot. We have learned, right? So I got student and average. Student and average. Now based upon average, I want to calculate grade. I want to display grade as well. So how do I calculate grade? Put a comma. Here I am going to write case. Right? When. What? Will it work in case? It is giving an error. Let me check this. If when average of SS marks is greater than 35, then I'll say pass. Then, and here I'll say end as grade. Now will it work? You have one column and two columns. When you have two columns, you should group by columns. Now let me execute. Fine. All are pass because this is derived column and you have aggregate function in this. You should have column or aggregate function. So we are using aggregate function. Now I can write all the cases, is it not? I'll say when less than 35, fail. Copy this. When less than 50, falls in C grade. When less than 60, falls in B grade. When less than 70, falls in A grade. Else it will falls in, I'll say A plus. There is also else. If none of the case satisfies, then it will go to else. Now let me execute. Got the grade? 74. Yes, it is greater than 70, right? 74 is greater than 70. For greater than 70, A plus. Is this clear? Do anybody have any doubt? But this query looks little complex, and this grade criteria, there are a lot of places in my project where, or in my in many queries, I use this grade criteria. So what I want to do, I want to simplify this. I don't want to write this grade criteria every time, and I don't want developers to change this, edit this. I don't want developer to change these numbers. This is my business rule. So what I want to create a function get grade and let developer use get grade. That's it. So what I can do for these cases, I can create a function. So I have function template, simple syntax, create function, function name. What should be the function name? Get grade. And what is that it is expecting? It is expecting a parameter, that is average, right? At avg as int. We are passing average, right? Based upon average, we are calculating grade. So it is expecting average. And what is that it is returning? Grade, that is varchar. Are you all with me? Input parameter is average. Its syntax is this way. And it is returning varchar. Begin and end. So first of all, I'll declare a variable at grade as, I need to say declare, I think. We have seen, right? Declare at grade as varchar 50. And I will say return at grade. Now here I need to calculate this grade. Simple thing, simplified. Here I will apply my logic. To apply logic, I'll say set at grade equals to this logic, case to end. But every time it is not average of this, I'll be getting whatever I have in my input parameter at average. At average. I'll check average, right? That's it. Is it making sense? We are expecting input parameter as average, or average what? Any number, integer. It can be anything. And I'm checking, is it less than 35? Then I'm setting this grade value as fail. If it is less than 50, then C, B, A. Sorry? It is independent. As of now, you don't think about table and all those things. It is an independent function. It has nothing to do with any table. We will see that. Have you understood this logic first of all? Simple logic. Now I'll execute this. I'm making an object now. I'm making a function. Now my function is ready. Now I can use this function in the same way, like select get date. Are we using with any kind of table? Standalone function, right? In the same way, I can use the function, whatever I have created now. Select get date. This is a function and it is expecting some parameter. I'll pass 56. Let me execute. B grade. Are you all getting? You remove these brackets. DBO dot get date. This is your user defined function. You pass 76. What will be the value? Fine. If you pass 100, A plus. If you pass 9, fail. Working perfect, independent function. Now wherever you want, you use it. I'll copy this query. I'm not going to disturb this. Paste it here. Now instead of this, writing all these cases, instead of writing all these cases everywhere, what I will say, DBO dot get grade of, I'm passing average, right? Hope it should work as expected. Simplified, or is it looking complex? Simplified. So in last batch, we have one of our students who runs a startup, and he has projects from Gulf countries. So he implemented this concept in his project, and code got reduced by, you can say, by lot of lines, and he got good performance also. So there was some calculation, I think it was related to some accounts, that he was doing in lot of queries. So he wrote one user defined function and he started using. So in this way, you can write anything. It is this function, you can see it is not at all related to any query. Wherever you have criteria for showing grade, you can go for writing function. So this is user defined function. Is this clear? But we hardly write functions. So whenever we have some kind of very serious requirement, we write functions. Otherwise, we normally write stored procedures. You can also write a function, table valued function we have. Right click and say new inline table valued function. This is the syntax for table valued function. That means a function can also return some records. It is not recommended, but in the interview they may ask. You have some parameters and all those things if you want, but I'm not passing any parameters for now. I'll say create function get employees by gender. So I'll pass at gender as varchar. This is input parameter, and returning table as select star from employee where gender equals to at gender. It is not recommended, but anyway I'm showing this. Whenever you have this scenario, you go for now I can say select get employees by gender, and I'll pass column DBO, or here DBO is not required, or I should say select star from, because it will be working like a table. It is returning a table, right? So table valued function. So select the star from so and so. So now you can do one thing here. You can perform some kind of joins if you want with some other table. So Anyway, don't worry much about this table valued function, but I have anyway discussed. Now next important topic, transaction. What is transaction? In simple words, you say select query is also a transaction. In our day-to-day life, have we done transactions? So you explain something about transaction. So means what?
Transfer of goods from one place to one activity to another activity.
Okay, let us take very common example to understand transaction in simple words. You transfer amount from your account to some other's account. So how many operations are we performing on the database? How many operations are we performing on database in terms of query rating when we transfer amount? Basically, I am transferring amount from my account to your account. Only one? Engineers?
More than one, because you are actually
Multiple.
money from my account.
Yes, what is what? First,
Selecting payers account.
did first operation detecting amount from payers account. Second operation,
Crediting it to the payer.
crediting it to the pay account. So on an average or in common, in general, we are performing two operations. In general, let us take in general. I am subtracting, see, I am talking in terms of programming. I am subtracting some amount from my account and adding some amount in your account. So how many operations? Two operations. If these two operations are successful, then I will say my transaction is successful. If one operation is successful, that is deducting amount from my account, and the second operation, that is adding amount to your account, failed, then what should happen? Whatever the amount they have deducted from my account should be rolled back. I should add it back to my account. Are you all getting the point in simple words? So if two operations are successful, then I will say transaction is successful. If any one operation failed, then I will say my transaction failed. Transaction failed means what all the operations you did, it should be rolled back. That is transaction in simple terms. There are 101%, there will always be a transaction scenario in any project. If it is little bigger project, even if it is a little bigger project, 101% you will have transaction. And there are two places where we can write transaction. One is in your database, SQL Server, you can write transactions. Another is in your programming also you can write transaction in your C# programming. So nowadays, these days, all developers or all architects, they are suggesting us to write transactions in programming, not in your database. Not in your database. But if there are old projects or some people, they are most bothered about some performance and all those things, then they'll ask you to write a transaction in the stored procedure. But 99.9% we are writing transactions in our programming. But we are learning transaction in SQL Server also. If you have some old project that you are working and you want to convert that project to the latest version, and you saw that there is a transaction in the stored procedure, you should understand that and you should write equivalent logic in your programming. So we are doing all those things. One of the main reasons for that is we want to make our what you can say code database independent. We want to make our code database independent, so that tomorrow if I have my Oracle database, this code should work on that. Otherwise, I have to carry all the logic of my SQL Server to Oracle. So in early days of programming, people used to write strong logics in SQL Server. But now, we do not suggest that. For SQL Server, you just make it simple CRUD operations. Writing complex joins, put it in SQL Server. But complex logics, bring it to the programming in C#. But once we go for programming, even there we'll try to understand what is, how to implement transaction. But I'm not going to explain what is transaction, because this is what transaction. Let us see. Transaction is a set of operations which must be executed as a group. If at all a single operation fails, then all the previous operations of that group must be rolled back, that is undone. This definition is what I have defined in my simple terms. Right? If you want textbook definition, you can Google, you will get a lot of definitions. Acid, all those things they will have. So let us not worry much about, let us try to think, implement the things in the simplified way, what we do in our real time. Same example, you have customer ID, name, balance. If I want to transfer the amount, write a transaction to transfer 2000 from Jack's account to Lily's account. So I need to say minus 7000 from Jack, minus 2000 from Jack and plus 2000 to Lily's. That is a simple thing, is it? Let us see that. I'll create a table. This time I'll create a table called as customer. Customer ID, int customer name, varchar balance, float. Simple table, right? I'll set this as primary key. Customer, table name is customer, and I'll refresh this. Today's concept, whatever we are learning, these are all your advanced concepts, you can say, advanced concepts, whatever we are learning. Basic query writing we have seen, but these are something advanced concepts. Customer ID 1, our favorite Peter. Then I'll go for 10,000. One of my student was who is working in some organization, he was testing the application and he was using all Peter, Tom, Jack, Lily, then all the employees. They are, why are you using these names and from where you got these names? So he learned from Manzoor the trainer. So whoever learned from Manzoor the trainer, they'll use all these names for testing. Second is Jack. $8,000. Fine. Now I'll just go for new, instead of new query, I'll use the same query window so that you can have all the things at the same place. Fine. For create function, we have same alter function, drop function, same thing, nothing new in that. Yeah, table valued function, because it is returning table, so it is table valued function. Now select star from customer. You got. Now normally if I want to transfer from Jack's account to Lily account, so what is it I'll do? Update customer, right? Set balance equals to balance minus 2000, where customer ID or customer name also you can use, whatever you want. Better we'll use customer ID. Customer ID equals to 2. I'll copy this. Then what is the next operation that I should perform? In customer account 3, I should say plus 2000. Is this clear? Now I'll execute these two things. 2 rows affected successfully. This is fine. This is ideal scenario. If everything goes well, there is no problem. Right? 2000 got deducted. They have added in Lily's account. Now, what if this second operation fails? What if this second operation fails? Now I will say plus 2000F. Make it this way, because this is what we are getting from our form, from UI. Some values we are getting from UI. So assume that we are getting some invalid values. Now what will happen? Let us see. Now let me execute before and after. This is before. This is after. Amount got deducted, but it has not transferred, right? And there was some exception message. It failed over here, right? You cannot convert. So whenever it is failing here, it is our job to roll back. How to do that? Now this is updated record. 4,000 and 11,000. Now if I execute again, what will happen? 2,000 and 11,000 it will be. Is it not? You see that error converting data type varchar to float. It is trying to convert this, but there is an error. So we are losing the amount. Are you all with me? I hope you understood the problem. Now let us see how to make it a transaction. Should say, we call it as exception, is it not? Whatever the error that we get at runtime, it is exception. The error that we get at runtime is exception. So to catch an exception, we have try catch block. So I'll say begin try, end try, begin try, end try. And here I'll say begin catch and catch. And in catch, I will display error message. So I can use print. There is also a print to display error message, some message I want to display. Operation failed. Now let me execute and see what happens. Earlier it was giving error message, if you remember. But now let us see what it will say. One row affected, second row failed, and it says operation failed. There is no errors now. We handled the exception runtime. There is no error. Okay, fine, there is no error, but let us see the database. Again 2000 directed. We never rolled back, right? Have we rolled back? So I need to roll back. I'll try to give some good indentation so that you should not get confused. Is this fine? Begin try and try. Begin catch and catch. It is catching exception, but it is not rolling back. To roll back, I need to have a transaction. Now I'll say begin trans or tran, or you can say transaction, whatever you want. You can use tran or transaction. Begin transaction. Name of the transaction you can write some name. Let us give some name. My trans. If all the things are perfect, then I will say commit transaction my trans. Fine. If anything goes wrong, then I will say roll back transaction my trans. Are you all getting? Simple thing, right? No need of commit after rollback. Fine. Now let me execute and see what happens. 6,000, 11,000. If we do not write transaction, what should happen? 4,000, 11,000. But we have written transaction, and let us see what will happen. One row affected, 0 row affected, operation failed. Now there must be a rollback. 6,000, 11,000. Got? That means it has performed this operation, but because this operation failed, it has rolled back. Now if it is fine, if this is the case, let me execute this transaction. One row affected, everything is good. Now let us see. Perfect. 2000 got deducted, and here we got added 2000. Are you all with me? But instead of this, it is better if we create a stored proc, right? Stored procedure. Create proc transfer amount at from as float at to as int to as int. You'll understand. At amount as float. We are making it generic now. As customer where balance equals to balance minus at amount where customer ID equals to at from. Are you all getting? I want to transfer from this account to this account and so much amount. 3 parameters. We are making it generic. Copy. At amount where customer ID equals to at 2. That's it. Now I'll execute this. We will have our stored procedure ready. Sorry? In stored procedure, we have a transaction. Now, whenever I execute a stored procedure, it is going to perform a transaction. Now, my stored procedure name is transfer amount. Now, how will I execute? EXEC transfer amount from 1 to 2, and I want to transfer 1000 rupees. Now, I will copy this, paste it here. I want to see before transaction, after transaction. I want to see the result before transaction and after transaction. Before transaction 10,000, 4,000. Now 9,000, 5,000. Perfect. Is this clear? Do anybody have any doubt? So this is your transaction. But this is something to understand. But what I'm going to discuss one real-time scenario. This is to understand transactions, how they work. What is transaction, how to write transaction, how they work. I hope you got, everyone understood that. There is one concept very important, and we normally ignore this concept in our real-time project, because of which we face a lot of problems. Slowly changing dimensions. For example, slowly changing dimensions in the sense, there are, in some scenario, there are few parameters or fields that we need to update, but not frequently. Once in a year, or twice in a year, or once in 2 years. Can you give any example? That we update once in a year. What is the field that we update once in a year? Can you give any example? Any scenario you take? Once in a year, age will get updated daily. And age, we do not take column for age. We have date of birth, and date of birth never get updated.
Like a driving license or something.
Very famous parameter for which you people are learning the technology. Salary. Don't you think salary gets updated once in a year? Is it not? This is one of the real-time scenarios that I am discussing. Twice in a year, or sometime we are not sure. For example, city of customer. Customer was in Hyderabad. Now he got shifted to some other. So city got updated, but not on regular basis, but it will get updated. So that is another example. Slowly changing dimensions, we call it as. So I have given you two real-time scenarios. One more, project. Employee is working on a project. He was working on project A for past 6 months. Now he has shifted to some other project B. Are you getting point? Student who was in first class. So every year class changes. Now he has moved to second class. Are you all getting the things? Now these are called as slowly changing dimensions. And we need to maintain history about it for our project. Why? Because we'll take salary example. Say salary of employee joined in the year 2000 and the salary was 5,000. Then in 2001 salary got updated to 6,000. In 2000 we updated the salary 6,000. Now in 2002 salary got updated to 7,000. We updated 8,000, 2003, 2004, 2005. So it was 5,000. Now it is 10,000. After 5 years, the salary of employees. Now, whenever the salary got updated, we updated the salary. Now what happened? Admin asked, now please tell me how much salary we paid this guy since he joined our organization. What is the current salary? 10,000. What we will do? 10,000 into 12 into 5. Is it correct? 5 years. For 5 years he is working. So if I take this salary, then what was the salary when he joined? We never maintained in the database. Are you getting my point? So in this scenario, normally wherever we have these parameters, these kind of parameters, we maintain them separately, called as history table in a lot of real-time projects. If you miss that, then this will one more scenario I will tell you. Say for example, a customer who has been giving me business for past 5 years. He lives in Hyderabad. Now after 5 years he shifted to Secunderabad, or who was living in India, he shifted to US after 5 years. So what I did, I updated the city or the state to US. Now at the time of generating report, when I say I want the report which should display me the business generated from each city. Now this customer city is now Secunderabad. So all the business that he got from Hyderabad now will be located in Secunderabad, which is not a proper report because we did not maintain the history. Are you getting the things? You did not got the point? See, this customer was living in Hyderabad for past 5 years and he was giving some business. Now he shifted to Secunderabad. Now I want how much business I got from every city. Now this customer address we updated to Secunderabad. Now what all the business I got from this customer when he was in Hyderabad will be added to Secunderabad business, which is not correct, right? Because the business that I got from this for past 5 years was not from Secunderabad, it was from Hyderabad. Now I am very much specific about city because we did not maintain history. So these are some real-time scenarios where history is very important, and to maintain history we normally write transactions. Let us understand salary scenario, which is very easy to understand. Dimensions that, see, these fields are called as dimensions normally in terms of your data warehousing. Dimensions that changes slowly over time rather than changing on regular schedule or time base. In data warehouse, there is a need to track change in dimension attribute in order to report historical data. Even though it is important for data warehousing, but in our applications also, in some scenarios it is important. Example, salary of employee, city of a customer, class of a student, these are all slowly changing dimension. Scenario, slowly changing dimension. For salary history we need to maintain. This is how we maintain. We have employee table, employee ID, employee name and salary. Employee ID, employee name and salary. Whenever an employee joins, what I will do, I will add a record, employee ID, employee name and salary. At the same time, I will insert another record in salary history table where I will write employee ID of this particular employee. This is the salary. This is the start date and end date is null because he joined now. Whenever we update the salary, then what I will do, I will say end date as current date and I'll make one more entry for same employee. This is the new salary and this is the start date and end date is null. Now for example, see this. Employee Manzoor joined the organization. So I'm making an entry. Manzoor 1, Manzoor salary 15,000. Now at the same time I'll make an entry in history table. Employee 1 salary 15,000. He joined on 1st April 2017 and date is null. This is my current salary. Is this clear? Any doubt? This salary ID is some auto increment column. Let us not worry much about that. Now, when the salary gets updated, salary got updated to 25,000. Now, what we did, when did it got updated? On 1st April 2018. So, end date of 15,000 salary is 1st April. And start date of 25,000 is 1st April. End date is null for same employee one. Simple, right? Simple record. We are maintaining history from this date to this date. We paid this salary. Now from this date we are paying this salary. So end date is not null. Two scenarios we have. So whenever we perform insert operation, how many insertions we need to make? 2. Whenever we perform update operation, how many updates we need to make and how many operations we need to perform? See, my question, you understand my question first of all. Whenever I want to create an employee, how many and what are the operations I need to perform? Tell me. How many and what are the operations? 2 insert operations. Is this clear? Insert employee, insert in salary history. Now, whenever I update the salary, how many operations and what are the operations I need to perform?
3 operations, 3 update operations.
3 operations.
2
Yes.
insert.
Very good. 3 operations, 2 update and 1 insert. 3 operations, 2 update. We are updating this, we are updating this, and we are inserting this. Making sense? Meaningful? So this transaction I will show you how to write. This transaction is your assignment. And here also we need to write transaction, right? See, for example, we inserted the record in this, but this insertion failed. Then I need to roll back. So unless and until I maintain history, how can I have a record? Are you getting my point? We updated this, but this insertion failed. Then I need to roll back. Got my point? We created employee, but that employee record does not exist in salary history. Then it is meaningless, right? Are you getting the point? Yes, no? Because we are not going to give 2 forms for employee to fill this as salary history. No, there will be a single form where we are passing salary. Now behind the scene, we are inserting that information into 2 tables. If first insertion is successful and second insertion failed, then I need to roll back. Are you getting the point? This is one of the most important scenarios for transactions that you will have in almost all applications. There are a lot of scenarios. I need to insert a record in the parent table, then I need to insert 2 records in the child table from the same form. So in that scenario, if insertion in the parent table is successful and insertion in the child table failed, then I need to roll back. Otherwise there will be huge, you can say, ambiguity in the application. Because if it failed and next time you are trying to create, then it will say that this record already exists, parent record. Child record, it will not allow you to create. If it creates, then there will be wrong mapping. So there will be a lot of problems that you will face. So in that kind of scenario, whenever you want to insert information in multiple tables from the single form, in simple words I am explaining, from the single form and the single button click, you want to push data into multiple tables, write a transaction. Got this? Is this simple? Simplified? From single form and on single button click, you want to insert records into multiple tables, then write a transaction. Is this clear? So once we go for implementation of UI and business logic, there it will be more clear. This point you note down. This is the new point I got today. For transaction, from one form and on one button click, if you want to push data into multiple tables, then write a transaction from one form and one button click. You want to push data into multiple tables, then you write a transaction. Yes, 10 years. Ten years ago.
Or may not return the value, or it is trying to perform the operation client is trying
When I used to do my job, and at the same time I used to deliver trainings, and web services was very boom that time. Like now we have web APIs, it was web services at that time.
telecom directory services.
So nearly 1 lakh, 1.5 lakh views for this.
A telephone directory service is a service in which you call some number 411 or something.
Actually, many students, they used to ask for demo classes. So what I thought, let me record a video and post it on YouTube. And if they want demo classes, let them see this. But I started getting good reviews from all over the world. That encouraged me to start recording videos. But the latest thing, if you see, Entity Framework Core does not support database first approach. Database first approach, it does not support. Now, what is database first approach, you will see. But there are a lot of projects that requires, they have their database and they want to generate classes. I did little R&D and I cracked that. Entity Framework Core, database first. I hope it should be in the top list. This is what we have. And you can see a lot of good reviews for that, people, those who are learning. Struggling. So, lot of things. I think Angular 8 live project. If you search, even that is also on the top list. Yes, top 10, top 5 you can say. This is add. First, second, third you will see this. And Entity Framework live project, ASP.NET Core MVC live project, or MVC live project also you can search. This should also be, I think, in the top list. So anyway, let's come back to the task. So have you understood this requirement? What do we need? So I'm going to deal with this. At the same time, I want to explain one more concept here. Now, you try to understand this. From form, we are getting three things: employee ID, employee name, salary. We are getting these three things. We are inserting these three things here, right? Then salary ID is auto-generated. Salary, this same salary. Start date is get date. From the function get date. End date is null. And employee ID, again we are getting it from here. Fine. Now assume that this employee ID is auto-generated. Identity column. Right. So you perform insert operation. Manzoor and 15,000. You pass these two things. So 15,000, I will take it from here, get that. Then how do I get the employee ID? How will I come to know what is the latest identity value that it has generated, so that I should pass it as employee ID? Have you understood my point? Employee ID is identity column. Assume that. And I want to take the recently generated identity value and pass it in the second table. Identity means I do not know, right? What is its value? It will be generated automatically. Now, how to get the recently generated value in the second query? Are you getting my point? This is one insert, this is another insert. In this insert, I need not to pass employee ID. That is fine because it is generated automatically. I'll pass Manzoor and salary. Now, but in this insert, I need not to pass salary ID. That is fine. But salary I need to pass. I'll get it from here. Start date I need to pass. Okay, get date. This is null. But employee ID I need to pass, right? This should be the employee ID of what we have generated recently. So how will I get that value? Have you understood the question first of all? Have you understood the question? What is that?
How you get EMP ID?
Yes.
How you are getting the salary from first day parent day? Same way when you get
No, we are not getting from parent table. You do not have any table as of now. We have a form. We have Manzoor and salary. You press enter. So what you do? Manzoor and salary, you will pass it to the first table. Then same Manzoor and salary you use. Salary you use. You pass it here. Start date is the get value, get date, and end date is null. But employee ID, how will I get from the previous day?
We can select top one and that's by employee ID.
Exactly. This is what I was expecting. We can select max of employee ID. That is the recently generated. That will be the highest value. Right? Employee ID 1, 2, 3 it will generate. Right? So recently generated employee ID is the maximum value. You getting my point? Okay, let us implement this, then you'll understand. Here we have EMP table, right? We created, I think. Employee ID, employee name, gender, manager ID. We created this. In this, I'm going to add one more column. Let this be as is. I'll add salary. Or shall I create new table? Is it okay? This is okay, right? Allow null. I should say allow null. Just save. Employee ID, is it auto-generated? It is not auto-generated. Let me change it to auto-generated. Now let me say save. What will happen? Let us see. Fine, it has got saved. Now let us see what are the old values. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But what will happen? Execute. These are auto-generated, right? Let us see this. X, Y, Z, male, 1. Fine. Fine. Is this clear? If I close this and say edit top 200 rows, I should get salary column also. Fine. I'll pass some salaries. 7,000, 8,000, 8,000. Any doubt in this? Anybody? No doubt. Now I need to create salary history table, right? I'll create a new table. Here I should have salary ID int, then EMP ID, not name. For this particular employee, we want salary for this particular employee. EMP ID. It is int. This will be the foreign key. Then salary. This will be, what did we set for salary? We set this, right? Float. It should be float. It should be float. Are you all getting things? Start date as date. Let us leave it date. End date as date. That's it. Any doubt in this? Salary ID is primary key, right? EMP ID, let me save this first of all. Save this table as EMP salary history. Fine. Now EMP ID is foreign key. So I'll select this. From database diagram I have shown you. Now I'm showing from here. From select this, right click, go for relationships. I'll say add relationship. Browse this. Primary key. I'm getting primary key from EMP table and EMP ID is primary key. Foreign key is employee salary history and EMP ID is foreign key. Got this? Say OK. Say close. Say save. We got the relationship now. Got it? If you want to check whether we got the relationship or not, you go for new database diagram. Why is it index out of range? Queries, where do we have queries? We should not lose the queries. These are the queries. Let me copy this first of all. I think best solution, I need to restart. Anyway, we got the relationship. If you want to see employee salary history, this is foreign key, right? Fine. Now I'll say select star from EMP. Got. Select star from EMP salary history. Got this, right? Order by 1 DESC. Order by 1 descending. New record is on topmost. This is fine. Is this fine? Now, what should we do? Insert into EMP values. What are the values? Employee ID is auto-generated. I need not to pass. Employee name I need to pass. Is it not? Ricky. Fine. Gender I need to pass. Male. Manager ID I need to pass. 2. Salary I need to pass. 4,000. Is this clear? Whenever I insert a record into employee table, at the same time I need to insert a record into salary history table. Is it not? Yes or no? Insert into employee salary history values. What are the values? Salary ID is auto incremented. I need not to pass anything. Employee ID, now you tell me what will be the employee ID of Ricky. You do not have. You do not have as of. So I'll put a comma. I don't know. Salary 4,000. We know that, right? Are you all getting the thing? Start date. Get date. End date. Now I hope you understood the scenario. Now you tell me, how will I know the auto generated value? Now you may say that, Sir, let us do one thing. Let us declare a variable. Let us declare a variable at EID as int, and you mean to say that select at EID equals to EID from EMP, or you can say max of EID from EMP. It is not EID, EMP ID, right? Better we'll use EMP ID. This should be your answer from what all I have taught. With that understanding, this should be your answer. Is it meaningful? Yes or no? No. This is your at EMP ID. I'll pass it here. We are inserting this, taking the latest generated EMP ID. Then we are inserting in salary history table. Are you all with me? Yes or no? Mohammed?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Now let me execute these things. Column name or number of supplied value do not match with the table definition. Are we missing something? EMP columns, employee ID, employee name, gender, manager ID, salary. Let us see the design. We missed something. This is fine. What about salary history? Let us see salary history also. Salary ID, EMP ID, salary start date and date. Column name or number of supplied value do not match with the table definition. Employee ID, salary, start date and date. See, get date will give us 1 minute. Hello.
Salary is the added.
1 minute. For salary ID, I think we did not make it as auto generated. That is the problem. Yes. Salary ID, we need to make it as auto generated. Now it should be fine. We inserted this Ricky record, right? Let us delete that. Let us give get date and see what happens here. It's perfect now. See this 11th record, Ricky, 4,000. 11th record, 4,000 salary, start date and date is null. This is fine. Everyone. But this should be a transaction, right? Don't you think it should be a transaction? See, if insertion over here fails, somebody is trying to insert mark 6,000. You have one insert, another insert. Now let me execute this and see what it says. One row affected and second row insertion failed. Now if you see, you have ambiguous information. We have 12 employee but no information about salary. Is it not the necessity for us to implement a transaction over here? Got the point? Let us implement a transaction. Are you all getting things? Those who are online? So how to write transaction? Same.
Yes, sir.
Try. So I'll say begin tran salary history, right? Then begin try, and here I'll say commit transaction salary history and try, then begin catch, then here I will say rollback transaction salary history, then I'll say print transaction failed. Are you all getting? And catch. Now I will go for another record. Fine. Salary 9,000. So it should be 9,000. Test. So this insertion is successful. This should fail. If it is failing, it should roll back this. Are you all with me? Now let me execute this.
Yes, sir.
One row affected, zero row affected, transaction failed. So it should not increase, it should not insert Raju record. Now let us see that. Do we have Raju record? Are you all with me? Now if I say get date, now both the records get executed, inserted. Got the Raju record 14. Is it clear? Anybody, any doubt? But there is one drawback in this. There is one drawback in this. I will give good indentation so that you people should not get confused what is happening where. Fine. No, in transaction we do not have. Is this clear? Anybody, any doubt? Now, what if you perform this insert operation and then you went for reading the maximum value? In this short period of time, some other user, they performed another insert operation. Then what will happen? Because it is a real-time app where you have thousands of employees accessing the things. Then you will get, say, you inserted 11th record, and by the time you read maximum, some 100 people inserted 100 records. Then you will get 111 as employee ID, which is ambiguous information. And everybody will get 111. But what should happen? 10th, who inserted 10th, they should get 10. Who inserted 11, they should get 11. For every user, they should get the value of their scope. Are you getting my point? User 1 inserted a record. So user 1 should get the recently generated value for that particular user. User 2 should get for that particular user. User 3 should get for that particular user. For that particular scope, they should get that value. The identity value of that particular scope they should get. Are you getting the point? Are you all getting? Yes, no? No? Sorry? No, first of all, have you understood what is the requirement? You got the requirement? So we will not do this childish thing. I'll say set at employee ID equals to scope identity. Scope identity will give you the identity value of this current scope, recently generated identity value for the current scope. Now, scope identity. How to get the employee ID value to insert in salary history table, as employee ID is identity column. Scope identity function returns the recently generated identity value, that is auto increment value for that particular scope or that particular user. Now, Easter manager ID is say 3, salary is 11,000. Now scope identity should work. Let us see that. It is already here. Yeah. I know what you need after going home. So I'll execute this. Easter. Now I'm inserting Easter. Let us see that. 2 rows affected. Got the employee ID 15. So this is very famous interview question. Scope identity. There are 2 ways that they can ask. First of all, they'll ask, have you heard about scope identity? If you say no, they will tell you go. Why? Because this is the scenario in lot of real-time projects that we need. This is one approach. This is how I ask. But some people will ask in this way. See, if you have a record which generates a value automatically and you want to read that value in the next query, how do we read? So people like me will say, let us go for select top 1 order by this and descending, and somebody will say select max, right? So this is very important concept for your real-time project. Scope identity will give you the recently generated identity value for this particular scope. If at all at the same time there are 1,000 records that other people inserted it, they will get their identity values, their scope identity values. For example, you inserted Easter. At the same time, some other is also inserting some value, right? So for you, scope identity value is 15. For them, it is 16. So you will not get 16 and they will not get 15. Are you getting my point? At the same time, multiple people may try to insert the record. So every people will have their own identity value. If we go for max, everybody will get the latest identity value, that is 100. By the time they insert the second record. Are you getting the thing? You inserted first record. By the time you insert second record, in this short period of time, there might be n number of people who are inserting the record. If you go for max, then you will get the maximum value that you have in your database, and that might be inserted by some other user. But with scope identity, what it will do, you inserted this record, so whatever the identity value you generated, you will get that. Whatever the identity value this person generated, they will get that. See, for example, you have this database, right? User 1, you wrote a stored procedure, is it not? You wrote a stored procedure. User 1, user 2, user 3, they are trying to do this. User 1 executed and they inserted the first record 1, and user 1 is now trying to insert in history table. Should get 1, right? But by the time he performs the second operation, in this meantime, user 2 inserted another record 2. Now user 1, if user 1 uses max, then user 1 will get 2, right? But user 1 should get 1. And by the time user 2 performs another operation, user 3 inserted 3. Now if user 2 is trying to insert, he will get 3 if we take max. So user 2, what is the identity for user 2? 2. What is the identity for user 3? 3. Are you getting my point? So scope, whatever the identity, so for this user 1, this is stored procedure we have, for user 2 also same. So every user is executing this stored procedure. So every user is generating one identity value. If this user generated 1, so if this user want to use identity value in some other table, they should get 1. So identity to this is scope, identity to this is scope, identity to this is scope. This is called as scope identity. Hope you understood now. Is this clear? How? With the help of scope identity function. See, if you are executing query, means it is allocating some memory in the RAM for you, for your user, then it will read the value generated by you. So it will allocate for each and every user, right, who is executing. So from that scope it will take. So this is your predefined function, scope identity. Is this clear? So transaction scenario, I have shown you one. What if insertion in salary history fails? We need to write transaction, right? I have shown that. So write a transaction to maintain employee salary history. Insert, I have shown. Update you need to do. Update is your task. And I explain what do we need in update. Fine. Update is your task. In update, how many operations we need to perform and what are those operations that we need to perform? In update, 2 update and 1 insert. So 1 update in salary employee table, 1 update in salary history, 1 insert in salary history. Got? I have shown this. This I have explained. This is what you need to implement. This is the assignment for the day. I think this is the only one assignment that I have given. If you do this assignment, then you will get everything what we have. Do this and also try to implement function. Try to implement function. That's it for today, and tomorrow's session will be last session for your SQL Server. Tomorrow we are going to handle triggers and some administrative tasks also. I'll show how to take backup, how to restore, how to generate a script, and all those things you will see tomorrow. I'll send this. I have shared this PPT, right? And your final assignment is this. Today, tomorrow, by this weekend, I want you to complete this assignment. This is your final assignment. Customer table, product table, order table. You have some information. Write a query, this, and note, product should be delivered within 10 days of order placed. I want you to write these queries, then write stored procedures for these queries. Fine. Write the query, write stored procedures for this query. So it is not at all complex. This is simple. And if you are done with this, tomorrow I'll give you an assignment to write a transaction. See, if first time a customer purchases a product, so customer will have single form, right? He is going to purchase this, fill his information, press submit. So data is going to insert in how many tables here? All. Customer is purchasing a product, so data will get inserted into how many tables?
If it is first time too, and
New customer is purchasing a product. So in how many tables do we need to insert?
2 tables,
What are those? Order and
customer and order.
or don't you think we need transaction here? Exactly, we need
Order.
to insert the information in customer table, then take the customer ID, then with that customer ID I need to insert the information in order table. I need not to insert product because customer will not create product. So that assignment I will give tomorrow. Don't worry about that. Today you do that transaction and this assignment. This is your today's final assignment. If you do this assignment, I will feel that I am successful in SQL Server because your success is my success. Fine.
Fine.
So that's it for today. Thank you very much.